Sa araw na ito, halina at pag-usapan natin ang tungkol sa variables. Dito tatalakayin natin kung ano ba ang ibig sabihin ng variables at ano-ano ang mga iba't ibang klase ng variables. Minsan kasi parang naririnig pa lang natin yung variables, parang sumasakit na ang ulo natin o kaya parang iniisip na agad natin na ang hirap pala niya. So bago tayo mag-umpisa ng ating presentation, gusto ko muna ipakita sa inyo ang isang chart or picture para makita natin ang kabuuan ng tatalakayin natin sa araw na ito. So here, you can see variables and the most common types of variables. So we will only be discussing about qualitative, quantitative, non-experimental, and experimental variables. These are the most common variables that we will be discussing in practical research 2 or research for grade 12 students. So how do we define a variable? How do we know what types of variables are we working on? Let us all together learn what variables are. So here, let me give you a simple definition of a variable. So we say that it is any factor or property that a researcher measures, controls, and or manipulates. Now when we talk about variables, it can also refer to the changing quantity or measure of any factor, trait, or condition which exists in differing amounts or types. Again, a variable can also be called a data item. So, kanina dun sa chart natin, yung heading natin nakalagay variables, and yung subheading natin nakalagay data. A variable is also a set of logical attributes or characteristics. It can also be about numbers or quantities. Now, because we say quantities, we can measure them or we can count them. Now, let us look at the different types of variables. Let us begin with qualitative variables. A qualitative variable describes a quality or characteristics of a data unit like what type or which category. Anong klase, saan ito nabibilang pag sinabi nating qualitative variables or categorical variables. Qualitative variables can be further classified into binary and multiple. So when we say binary, it simply means that there are two values, no? While multiple can have three or more values. Under the multiple variables, you can have the nominal and the ordinal variables. A nominal variable simply names or labels a characteristic or trait, while ordinal refers to how the data unit is ordered or ranked. Let me show you an example. Let's look at the chart again. So we're talking about qualitative variables or categorical variables. So you have binary and then you have multiple. Under multiple, you have nominal and ordinal. So let's have an example under binary. Okay. So here, you can see that sex is an example of a binary variable. Why is it called binary? Because there are only two values that you can give to the variable sex. Okay? So, biologically speaking, so we say that a person is either male or female. Again, binary, there are only two values about that data unit. Another is the answer. So for example, you're going to conduct a survey and you have decided that you are going to Ask them whether they prefer or not prefer something. And of course, the answers would be just yes or no, meaning it's a binary variable because there are only two values for answer. Okay? Pipili ka lang kung yes or no. Sa multiple naman, tingnan natin yung pagkakaiba ng nominal sa ordinal. Again, pagka sinabi nating nominal, it simply names or labels a data unit. Pero ito pwedeng tatlo or mahigit pa. So, tingnan natin yung example, ano? So, here, makikita natin, halimbawa na section. A section can be 3 or more than 3. It can be as many as 30 sections, 36 sections sa mga malalaking school, ano? So, for just an example, let's take these sections, rational, smart, and innovative. Dito, makikita mo na pare-pareho lang sila ng standing, ano? Kasi nilagyan lang natin ng label kung ano yung sections nila. Pinangalanan lang yung kanilang sections. So, ang tawag natin doon, nominal variables. Okay? Second example, you have movies. Movies can be classified as action, comedy, horror, romance, thriller, romance comedy, and so on. So again, that data unit can be classified in many ways, okay? We can name them or label them in 3 or more ways. They are of equal importance. Now, what is the difference between nominal and ordinal? So here, we name or label the characteristic or trait. In ordinal, we arrange them in order or in ranked. For example, birth order. Okay? Halimbawa na nag-fill out ka ng information about yourself, ano? Tapos tinatanong ka, pang ilan ka? Okay? So, ano-ano yung mga pwedeng pagpilian? So, normally, nakikita natin doon, ano? Are you the oldest? Are you the middle child? Or are you the youngest? Again, 3 or more classification. Pero anong pagkakaiba nito sa nominal? Dito kasi sa ordinal, inaayos natin siya mula sa pinakabata o hanggang sa pinakamatanda or vice versa. Another example is the level of education. So, yung level of education, kapag ka ordinal data ang ginagamit, ordinal variable ang ginagamit natin, ang pwede nating ilagay dyan, preschool, elementary, junior high school, senior high school, undergrad, and grad school. So, ordinal, meaning, meron siyang bahagdan, ano? Meron siyang ranking. Ano yung unang step, ano yung susunod na step, and so on. So, yun yung sinasabi natin na ordinal. Now, let's move on to quantitative variables. Quantitative variables are also called numerical variables. They are variables with values that describe measurable numeric quantity. So again, we're talking about quantity and it answers the questions how many or how much. Now let's continue. A quantitative variable can be categorized as either discrete or continuous. When we say discrete, these are data that can take on certain individual values. When we say certain individual values, it refers to whole numerical values. On the other hand, continuous variables or data can take on any value in a certain range. We'll have examples later, no? Now, let's continue. A continuous variable can either be a ratio or an interval variable. Kapag sinabi nating ratio, it has a true absolute zero. Kapag sinabi nating true absolute zero, it simply means nothingness, wala, or empty. Okay? Interval, on the other hand, has values below 0. Now, let's look at the examples of quantitative variables so that we can have a better understanding of their differences. So, let's begin with discrete variables. So, an example of a discrete variable is the number of students in a class. So, pwede nating sabihin, sa klase ninyo, meron kayong 25 students. Okay? So, halimbawa na maliit lang yung klase. Pero minsan, may mga klase na malalaki. So, pwede nating sabihin, sa kabila namang section, ang mga estudyante ay 60 students. Again, it's a whole number, no? It's a whole numerical value. Another example is the number of FB likes that you can get when posting an interesting picture, and then you get happy because there are so many who like the post. So, pwede nating sabihin, there are 3,000 people who liked your post. Again, it's a whole number. Another example is the number of votes in an election. A candidate can win, okay, over another candidate when the votes are counted. Okay? So, pag ito ay binilang at natapos na itong bilangin, it can always result to a number of votes. At yung number of votes na yon, meron siyang katumbas na whole numerical value. Okay? So, that is a discrete variable. Pagka sinabi naman natin continuous variable, it can take on any value within a given range. Ngayon, yung range na yun, pwedeng ratio or interval. So, ano lang yung pagkakaiba ng dalawa? Actually, yung ratio has all the characteristics of an interval variable except for, okay, yung ratio, meron siyang tinatawag na true or absolute zero. Ano ba yung ibig sabihin ng true or absolute zero? It simply means the complete absence of the characteristic being measured. Okay, let's have an example. So, pag sinabi nating absence of the characteristic being measured, at ratio variable ang tinutukoy natin, so pwede nating ibigay na example lang, age, height, weight. Bakit? Kasi pagka ang nilagay mo sa age ay 0, sa height ay 0, or sa weight ay 0, it simply means there is nothing. There is no one. Kasi yung absolute zero ay complete absence of the characteristic. So, wala namang edad eh. So, ibig sabihin, wala. Wala pa pala siya. Iniisip pa lang siguro nila na magkaanak. Ano? So, wala pa eh. Ngayon, kung sasabihin nyo naman, hindi ma'am, buntis na po yung ina. O kung buntis siya, sasabihin naman natin, okay, 3 months old pa lang yung fetus sa loob ng katawan ng kanyang ina. Meron pa rin siyang measurement, ano? Pero pag sinabi mong 0 day, wala rin yun talaga, no? So, there are plenty of ways to describe. But when we say absolute zero, wala talaga. Absence, okay? Now, let's go to interval variables. When we say interval variables, it does not have a true absolute zero value because it has values below zero, kagaya ng temperature. Diba, minsan, if you would like to go to a country na merong 4 seasons, ano, so halimbawa na, K-pop fan ka, at gusto mo makarating sa Korea, at ang gusto mong panahon ay autumn. So, i-check mo ngayon, ano ba ang temperature, ano? So, halimbawa na, pupunta ka ng mga second week ng November, medyo malamig na. Tiningnan mo yung temperature reading or temperature forecast. So, pagtingin mo doon, negative 12. Okay? So, yung negative na 12 na yon, it has a value. Hindi natin pwedeng sabihin na pagka sinabing negative 12 ay wala ng temperature. It simply means that in an interval value, there is still a value even if it is below 0. Okay? So, sa ratio kasi, because it has true absolute 0, sinasabi natin na it does not exist anymore because there is a complete absence of the characteristic that is being measured. Now, when we talk about absolute zero, iba naman yung tinatawag natin na Kelvin, ano? Yung Kelvin kasi is also called the coldest possible temperature. So, pagka sinabi nating zero, at ang tinutukoy natin na measurement ay Kelvin scale, ratio yon. Okay? Ibig sabihin, hindi na talaga siya mas bababa pa doon. Okay? Let's continue with the example. So, temperature, you have pH values ng mga tubig, age range. Now, ano yung pagkakaiba ng age doon sa ratio at nung age range sa interval? Doon sa age, you are describing the specific age of a person. So, halimbawa na, sinabi niya na 18 years old, isa lang yung value na hinihingi niya, no? Or ipinakikita. Sa interval, normally, nakikita natin to sa mga survey. Nilalagyan na kaagad ng age range para maiwasan yung sobrang daming i-analyze na age, ano? So, halimbawa na nagsasagot ka ng survey, nakalagay doon, ang pagpipilian mo na age ay 16 to 20. 21 to 25, 26 to 30. So, iyon, tinatawag natin na interval because we are counting the persons or the respondents who belong to that particular age range. And it has an equal interval, ano? So, yung ages ranging from 21 to 25 has an interval of 5, which is similar to or the same as 16, age range of 16 to 20. 5 pa rin yung kanyang interval. So, yun yung pagkakaiba nung age at saka yung age range. Pumunta naman tayo sa non-experimental research. So, sa non-experimental research, we try to describe or show the similarities or relationship of one variable to another variable. So here, a non-experimental variable lacks the manipulation of an independent variable. Here, okay? We do not manipulate an independent variable. So, normally, hindi natin tinatawag na independent variable pagdating sa non-experimental research. But we can use the terms predictor variable and criterion variable. So here, rather than manipulating an independent variable, the researchers conducting a non-experimental research simply have to measure the variable as they naturally occur in the lab or in real world.